Before we begin, I would like to say a huge thank you to the voice actors, Dr. Squatch and Nick Cortez. Their links are in the description below. It is the year 52 BBY. George Binks gives birth to his son and heir, Jar Jar Binks. A few years after Jar Jar was born, it was clear that he was strong in the Force. His father hid him away from the other Gungans for fear that they would inform the Jedi and his son would be taken away from him. His father was a whaler, but in his spare time was a historian and researched the Sith. From a young age, his father taught him everything he knew about the dark side and Sith, reading him bedtime stories about ancient Sith lords and their conquests. From Revan to Malgus and Bane, Jar Jar became familiar with the Sith of old and became obsessed with their tales. His father began to watch the Force develop for the first time with his own eyes. His son became his very own experiment. Watching his powers in the dark side grow, George was under the illusion he could control Jar Jar and use him to his advantage. But he was severely mistaken. Jar Jar's ambition and power had outgrown his father's control. He takes in knowledge like it's water and begins mastering the Force techniques he's heard about in stories. He has a talent not seen in many millennia. It is the year 32 BBY and Jar Jar is now 20 years old. He reached a level of power where he can sense the presence of two other beings with similar strength in the dark side and is very eager to meet them. His father attempts to stop him from leaving.
There is nothing more you can teach me, father.
As Jar Jar breaks his father's neck and leaves the Gungan city. Killing your own father should leave you upset and remorseful, but instead of feeling remorse, Jar Jar felt emboldened. Before we continue, I'd like to announce we are giving away a replica Anakin Skywalker lightsaber from Art Sabers. Art Sabers has sent us this lightsaber just to give it away for you guys. This is one of the best replicas I've seen and is one of such good quality. The lightsaber comes in this cool passcode lockbox with everything inside. The lightsaber is very versatile and comes with many different colors and styles, including my favorite, the Dark Saber. Huge shout out to Art Sabers for sponsoring the giveaway, so you guys should definitely check out their vast lightsaber collection on their website. I'll link it in the description below. To enter the giveaway, all you need to do is comment your thoughts on today's video and you'll be entered to win. I'll announce the winner when we get to 25,000 subscribers. Okay, back to the video. He'd broken away from the chains of his past. He knew he wanted the Sith to rule the galaxy again, to make his heroes, the Sith of old, proud, and he began to devise a plan. This is where he meets Jedi Knight Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was able to hide his presence in the Force and portray himself as an innocent and clumsy Gungan. He follows them around to Tatooine and then Coruscant, where he first became connected to the wider galaxy. After seeing how vast the galaxy was, Jar Jar had come to the conclusion he would carry on the mission from the Sith of old that he spent his childhood learning about, to control and rule the galaxy. He would carry on their legacy and destroy the Jedi Order. He successfully manipulates Padme into positioning himself as senior representative for Naboo in the Galactic Senate. During his campaign, two important events occurred. He met Senator Palpatine, whom Jar Jar deduced was a Sith Lord, strong in the dark side, just like him. He could sense another being, stronger in the dark side nearby, presumably Palpatine's master. He also met Anakin Skywalker and felt his strength in the Force. This boy had potential, and the Jedi deemed him the chosen one. He could use him, but decided against it. If Jar Jar was to control the galaxy, he would do it on his own.
Everything will soon be mine.
Jar Jar laid eyes upon the other Sith Lord, Hago Damask, aka Darth Plagueis. The night before the election of the new Supreme Chancellor, he could sense the strength of the dark side in these two beings, but he could successfully conceal himself from them.
It seems they don't notice me, sir.
He begins to formulate plans and strategies in his mind about how he could use these two for his own benefit. Would he let them take over the galaxy and then make his move? Should he kill them now and take over their operation? Time will show him the right move, and time he has. But time wasn't on the side of Darth Plagueis. The next morning, Jar Jar was only able to sense the presence of one Sith on Coruscant, and learned of Hago Damask's death on the HoloNet.
My, Palpatine. It seems you've made your move. You must think you're unstoppable now. But I will show you the true power of the dark side.
Jar Jar has come up with his strategy. He began using an ancient Force technique he learned from Emperor Vitiate's journal that his father stumbled upon. He begins placing false dreams in Palpatine's head. These dreams allowed Jar Jar to control Palpatine's plans and movements. The dreams showcase Palpatine's death, but also how he could avoid it. In his dream, he heard a voice.
Chief Palpatine, you must do exactly what Misa says, or you will die very slowly.
This terrified Palpatine to his very core. Jar Jar used the dark side to manipulate his voice so that Palpatine wouldn't recognize him. Night after night, Palpatine had the same nightmare. He became obsessed. He couldn't pinpoint what voice he heard in his dreams, so no matter how hard he tried, he failed. But he began following the steps showcased to him very clearly. And so, Palpatine began formulating the clone army and putting the pieces in place to begin the Clone War. He ordered Palpatine to commission the clone army, which included 150 general orders. Without anyone's knowledge, Binks used the dark side to control the mind of the lead Kaminoan scientist, Nala Se, to include his own special order that only he himself could use. Jar Jar spent months carefully placing the pieces of his plan into motion. Palpatine had completely lost his mind. He spent almost a year of his life tormented by a terrifying voice in his sleep, a voice that threatened his death every waking moment. Until one night, when the nightmares stopped. Jar Jar had done what he needed to do. His plan was set in motion. Now it was time to wait. Palpatine thought he was free, but he was severely mistaken. He concluded that the dreams must be the dark side talking to him, but there was a flicker of doubt in his mind. Unbeknowingly, he would carry out Jar Jar's plan, facilitate the creation of the clone army with Count Dooku's help, and begin the separatist movement. The Chancellor began to devise his own plan again. The nightmares never included Anakin, so he still planned to turn the boy to the dark side and destroy the Jedi Order. The events here would follow suit. Anakin is trained by Obi-Wan after Qui-Gon is murdered, and he becomes extremely powerful. Eventually, the Clone Wars will begin just as Jar Jar had intended, and Anakin will become the poster boy for the Jedi Order, just as Palpatine wanted. Without their knowledge, the two separate Sith, Darth Sidious and Darth Jar Jar, had plans that were overlapping and working at the same time. They each had the same ultimate goal, but the way they would achieve that played out very differently. Jar Jar continued his work with the Naboo Senator and kept himself in the loop with all galactic affairs. For his long-term plan to succeed, he required all the knowledge in the galaxy. After Palpatine was rescued from the Invisible Hand by Anakin and Obi-Wan, Jar Jar felt like it was time for his true plan to begin. His manipulation of Palpatine to initiate the Clone War was successful, but now it was time for him to make his own move. He had to wait long enough in the war so that the corruption and instability was so high that when he detonates his grand plan, the Republic would be free for the taking. That night, as the galaxy sleeps, Jar Jar opens Emperor Vitiate's journal and recites the Force spell to give Palpatine one last nightmare. This time, it will be short but terrifying and deadly. As Palpatine closed his eyes to sleep, he was jolted into a nearby forest where all he could hear were leaves rustling and the wind swaying from side to side. Then his eyes became fixated on one individual's silhouette.
I'm coming for you.
Palpatine immediately woke and was screaming in his quarters. He couldn't believe it. It had been over a decade since his last dream, and now they had returned. Palpatine had to act on his plans immediately. The following day, Palpatine reveals to Anakin that he is the Sith Lord, much to Anakin's surprise. Anakin tells Master Windu, who employs him to remain in the council chambers. Windu takes 3 Jedi Masters as they go to the Chancellor's office. Everything remains the same. Palpatine leaps forward and strikes them down with his blade. After a lengthy contest against Windu, he forfeits the duel when he senses Anakin coming and is forced to the floor, defeated. Everything was going just as Palpatine had planned, or so he thought. Unbeknownst to Palpatine, Jar Jar was lurking in the shadows, waiting like a crow to pounce on its prey. Anakin kills Windu and pledges himself to the dark side. Jar Jar was astonished at the wisdom of Palpatine. He had managed to manipulate this young boy into doing his bidding, but it didn't matter. All of that was for nothing. Jar Jar slowly stepped to his feet and motioned himself behind Anakin, where he ignited his crimson red blade and dug it through the back of Anakin Skywalker. As Anakin fell to the floor, Jar Jar revealed himself to Palpatine. Palpatine gasped and screamed as he saw Jar Jar. He knew exactly who this was. Everything became so clear to the Chancellor. The source of the voice in his head. He thought that he had manipulated Anakin and conjured a masterful plan, but in reality, he was merely a pawn. A pawn in a larger game with a deadlier, more powerful villain, and his name was Darth Jar Jar.
You sir thought you were so smart, so cunning with your little plan, but you sir did not think of Misa and what I might be able to do to you sir. Misa will not be denied what Misa deserves. Misa will crush anyone who stands in Misa's way, just like I told you sir, all those years ago. If you sir do not follow Misa's steps, then you sir will die a painful death.
Palpatine was frozen with shock, unable to move, and with that, Jar Jar stabbed Palpatine through the chest and killed him. He was the Sith Lord now. Jar Jar picked up his communications device and contacted the clone army, where he muttered the words,
You sir must execute Order Binks.
Darth Jar Jar had done it. He won. The Jedi Order completely collapsed that night, and the powers of the galaxy shifted hands. His secret order of Binks also targeted every senator, which means that the clones attacked and killed them too. Jar Jar may have needed the Senate in order to garner more effective control over the galaxy, but he didn't care. He knew he was so powerful he could do it without them. He thrived in the anarchy, and through the chaos, he would instill his rule. Jar Jar took his place as the ruler and tyrant of the galaxy. His demonic view of the world caused him to become the most feared ruler in history. His reign was full of darkness and terror, and would result in the death of trillions. The galaxy would never recover. After his rule was certain, a few Sith of old, including Malgus, Revan, and Bane, appeared in front of Jar Jar.
Thank you, Jar Jar. You have enforced our will onto the galaxy, and now our spirits can finally be at peace. We entrust the dark side fully to you. We know you will serve it well.
He nodded in acknowledgement of the Sith as their spirits disappeared, finally to rest. The Jedi would eventually be wiped out. This would conclude with the execution of Yoda at the hands of Jar Jar himself. The Jedi Grand Master was no match for him. There was only one thing that threatened his rule: the children of the Chosen One, Luke and Leia. But Jar Jar acted fast and eliminated that possibility. He made sure that regardless of what happened to him, the Sith would remain on top. And if someone even whispered the word Jedi, they would be executed on the spot. Darth Jar Jar created the most ruthless empire to ever exist. He was sporadic, unpredictable, and demonic, which instilled fear in every corner of the galaxy. After the Jedi's death, no one dared to oppose the new emperor, and he would never be dethroned until the end of time.